Hi, and welcome to Reality Check. I'm your host, Lou Meyer, and our guest this week is our friend, Dr. Don Williams. Dr. Don, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Lou.
This is great. And as usual, another appropriate topic. This one is stress. And at this time, my God, there's a lot of potentially stressful situations out there.
Absolutely.
So, what is stress, and is it good or bad?
Well, what is stress? How I like to define stress is any stimulus that changes your body's present function. So, we're sitting here, and if the tiger jumped out from around that curtain over there, we'd want to be able to respond to that, and it would be an appropriate response to go into an emergency or fight or flight response because there's a real tiger. If we were sitting here and we were hungry, someone brought in a nice meal, we'd eat, and it'd be appropriate to go into a digestive response. Both of those are stimulus that changes your body's ability to respond in the moment, because that's one of the keys to health, is the body's ability to adapt to its circumstances, meaning the ability to adapt internally to the demands placed upon it externally. So when we ask, is it good or bad? Well, it's good when you're responding in the moment. It's bad if it's prolonged and out of time, meaning you're responding to something maybe from the past, or you're projecting some issues from the past into the present, and now you're coloring the whole event, and it may be prolonged. So what happens is, if the stress is prolonged, it's bad because it leads to exhaustion.
And doesn't a prolonged stress, doesn't it change your chemical makeup or something? So that's why people will get heartburn or headaches or whatever?
Absolutely. There's a whole physiology associated with a fight or flight or defense response. Is muscles become tense, heart rate and blood pressure increase, eyes dilate to take in all the information, but digestion, elimination, and healing are suppressed because it's not a priority for your survival.
Getting out of it.
Yeah, if you get out of it, great, then you go back into doing it. But if you don't get away, the body's not going to waste energy on digestion, elimination, or healing if you're tiger breakfast.
Wow. Elimination might happen, huh?
Yeah, spontaneously.
Boy. Well, let's take a situation like today with this stock market going up and down like crazy, and who knows who to vote for, and the world is in turmoil. And, I internalize a lot of this stuff. And, my processes are my own. I just make stuff up and try and ground myself or do whatever. But what can folks do? We already know from our many discussions that you're creating your own reality with your thought process.
Absolutely.
How would you work that to alleviate stress?
Well, we first have to recognize too that there are physical, chemical, and emotional stresses. Both the physical and the emotional produce chemicals. So that's good to understand, because your body's always going to react to chemicals. So one of the strongest input is negative emotions. And so recognizing when we have a negative thought, because we were talking earlier that in truth, circumstances are always essentially neutral. Mm-hmm. It's how we color it that creates our stress. So we're either going to have a positive stress response or a negative stress response. So it really depends on how you respond or react to what's going on. One person can experience one thing and consider it a good thing. Another person experiences the same thing and judge it as a bad thing. So it comes into judgment. How am I judging? How am I labeling that experience? So yes, it is what we call stressful times. We have an election. We have big choices, economic meltdowns, environmental meltdowns, so to speak, environmental changes, and realizing that it's all perfect. It's not ideal. It's not what we'd really want, but it is perfect. So how do we respond to it in positive ways? And when I say respond in positive ways, I don't mean to be a Pollyanna, like everything's okay.
No, well, yeah, you're not living in denial.
No,
yeah.
That'd be like an ostrich, sticking the head in the sand. You want to be able to respond, see it as something to create a solution for. Okay, here's what's going on. A positive person is more solution oriented, and focusing on themselves and how they want to respond. Because then it's not a judgment. If I say, Lou, you should, now I'm in judgment. How do I know what you should do? But I can look at what's going on, see someone make a choice, and instead of saying that's good or bad, I can say, well, I would make a different choice. They're welcome to make their choice. So again, it comes down to coloring. and allowing ourselves to move through the emotions, experience whatever the feeling is in the moment, experience it, move through it, and move on.
Now, when we're born, we're not born with stress. Kids don't come out of the womb and suddenly go, oh no, there's stuff going on. So stress, is that something that's built up over time?
It can be, especially what we do know now is that most of our belief systems are established in the first 2 to 3 years of life. Because we don't judge, evaluate, or reason at that point. We're just wide open in our subconscious, and we're just taking in input. And whatever we see and experience through those 5 senses, as limited as they may be, is what we determine as how you're supposed to deal with the world. So who do we pattern ourselves after? The first 2 to 3 years of life.
The family.
The family,
parents,
for the most part, the parents. So most of us grew up in something less than functional families.
I know I did.
I did too. And so we have a certain coloring of the world around us. And it starts to establish that. We start to develop our egocentric way of living. Because when we're young, everything's about us. And then we start to expand. Oh, this is my family. Right? Oh, okay, now this is my community. This is my nation. We start to expand
your boundaries go out.
Yes, until we can live in an expanded sense, is what this whole evolution, so to speak, that's happening on the planet, is people moving away from their total egocentric viewpoint to realizing that we are connected and my actions affect you and everybody else on this planet. And that's been something slowly emerging. But it's also by the people that don't understand, many times make fun of that. Like, oh yeah, the butterfly flapping its wings in China created the hurricane.
I know.
And they kind of make fun of it instead of recognizing that my thoughts and feelings, my actions, either contribute to the upliftment of us as a society or the contribution of dragging us down and leaving us in the same old, same old.
What about and this is sort of a sideline on this topic, but what about some people can really react calmly to the most incredible stuff, and other people can overreact, and I have personal relationships with some of these folks who can overreact to the most minute thing, and again, it's your perception of the thing, but how can two people be in a situation of this? Let's just take a life-threatening situation. One guy is and maybe it's through training, boom, thinks of the right thing to do, MacGyvers his way out of it. Somebody else is huddled in the corner in the fetal position hoping they don't die. How does that work?
Some of that is hardwired in. Some of it is genetic tendencies. Some of it is our personalities. Certain personalities are more apt to be more of a leader. Some people more of a follower. Some people are more perfectionists. Some people are more peacemakers. The Enneagram's a fabulous study that shows us about our personalities.
That's the numbers?
The numbers, and learning about that. There's many, many systems. So there's certain aspects. Some people are just more innately good leaders, but they wouldn't be good in other aspects. So that's why having self-discovery, learning more about ourselves and how we respond. And another thing is, like you said, is practice.
Can we transcend stress?
Absolutely. And again, we can transcend our Enneagram, our patterns. None of the Enneagram patterns are good. They all suck. It's just where we're stuck. So we learn how to transcend those so that we can incorporate the good qualities of all the personality traits.
It gives you some sort of guideline to where you're at the time or something?
Yeah, and some people use astrology. Some people use... There's many, many ways to have more knowledge about ourselves and how we function. Ultimately, again, we have to be able to evaluate whether we're having a negative thought or a positive thought. We have to learn to be able to call a spade, because most people think that there are neutral thoughts, when in actuality, there are only negative or positive thoughts. And if we can start to recognize that, one of the key things is think about what you think about when you think about it, and to be aware of how those thoughts feel. And
so that at least connects the thought process with your physicality.
Exactly, because each negative thought, negative emotion, has a certain chemical makeup. One or multiple chemicals that are going to be destructive if they're prolonged, appropriate if it's in the right moment. So the key is being appropriate. And that's difficult because, again, we were talking about the belief systems in the first few years of life. Well, now we've got these filters, these coverings that's over our authentic self, and we've been conditioned that it wasn't okay to be who we are. In the first few years of life, what words do you think you heard the most?
Be careful.
And don't stop
Don't
that.
do this. Yeah,
you're
sure.
bad. You're this. And that's if you had fairly good parents. Many times, again, talking about dysfunctional families, you're stupid. You're ugly. You're this. You're that. And when you're
Why
young,
aren't you more like this person?
exactly. So now you can't even be yourself because it's not okay to be yourself.
And you're getting this information from the people who matter the most to you in your life, from year zero.
So you believe them because your parents are God. When we were young, they created us.
Yeah. Well, I'm still uncreating.
Exactly.
That'll work.
And that's really, you got it right on the head, Lou, because the key is deprogram. We don't have to reprogram. The original plan is always, the original design is always there. We just have to remove enough coverings to be able to express it. Because, we were talking earlier, and we know this from all of our spiritual studies and even the religious studies, that the plan was a heaven on earth. And humans were given choice of free will. We can choose to cooperate or not cooperate. Mm-hmm. And most people don't connect cause and effect. And that's one of the big keys, is to connect our actions with the effect. Because most people have no connection between, I did this and it resulted in this, especially in their health.
Or anything else that happens on Earth. Everybody thinks they're their own autonomous little self, which turns out to not be true at all.
Yeah. So there are things we were asking, how can people respond to stress in a more healthy way? It does take practice, it does take awareness, and a awareness of how our choices and what are the effects. We've talked many times about the 6 essentials. If you make good choices, healthy choices in the 6 essentials, what you eat, drink, breathe, exercise, rest, and think, you're going to have a healthy effect. If you make poor choices, you're going to have illness, something less than ideal health. And all of those are the body trying to survive the best it possibly can, given your choices. But again, the key is connecting the choices to the outcomes.